students that come from many, many different areas and walks of life. You know, from the suburbs, the urban backgrounds, middle class, lower class, upper middle class. So we have a good dynamic of our students that go to our schools. I want to start off with a story first, really quick. About,
Excuse me, folks. It's now 10:10. Our sessions 2 should be starting at this time. Thank you.
All right, about myself, because I have a little bit of cultural diversity myself. Make sure you sign in, please. Yeah, I came to actually this country when I was 5 years old. I was 5 years old. I was born in Cameroon, West Africa. I had the privilege of growing up there with my grandmother. All right, my parents had already come to America when I was 2 years old. My dad when I was 2 weeks old. My mom when I was 2 years old. To come make a better life for us in America. I had an older brother. My older brother lived with my father's mom, and I lived with my mother's mom. So that was an interesting experience. We saw each other maybe once a week because there wasn't enough money for us in the two farm village areas that we lived in. So we lived separately. And we would come together and see each other quite often. And about the time when I was 5 years old, my parents came back to Africa to collect me. So I was a real live coming to America. When they came to get me, I didn't even recognize my mom. I thought my grandmother was my mother, because she had raised me until I was 2 years old. So that was very interesting, being introduced to someone and being told that this is your mother. And that was the first chance I got to meet my mom and my dad that way. And my brother had to kind of comfort me because I didn't want to come to America. And they had to con me with beef jerky from the market because I enjoyed that at that age. So they used that to kind of coerce me to go with them. And we flew to Europe because for some reason coming out of Africa it's difficult to get a flight directly from Africa to America. So we flew into Europe, France in particular. I got to eat some French croissants, stay in a French restaurant, get a little French experience, French culture, that was great. And then we moved on, came on over across the ocean, about 13 hours. The whole trip took about 20-something hours in total. Got to America, landed in New York. Huge airport, never seen these many people in my life. Never seen anyone that looked anything other than what I look like in my entire life. So you can imagine the look on my face as we're landing in New York airport and the JFK, and my eyes are popping out of my head as I'm looking at all these different cultures and all these kind of people I've never ever seen before in my life. It was a magnificent experience and ultimately became a cultural shock for me because I was from such a different environment. Coming into an American environment and seeing all these things, everything stuck out. I remember it like it was yesterday. I can dream about these things and it's like I'm really there. All right, so when I started school, we moved first to a neighborhood really close to this, Wilkinsburg. Some of you guys heard of it. I went to elementary school in Wilkinsburg. All right, yeah, and one of the first things I realized when I started going to school after I learned how to speak English, I was English as a second language student, ESL student in Pittsburgh, one of the first ones, and so that was great. I learned English while other kids were at lunch. I took my recess to catch up and learn how to speak English. One of the things I realized is that you get indoctrinated into American culture, whether you like it or not, one way or another. Some of the things that happen to you, okay, are not even, you're not even being hurt by individual people. Sometimes there's systems that are set up and it can be against you as a young child coming into schools or coming into this country. And you don't even realize it because you have no idea because you're so young. So one of the things I ran into as a student first when I came into this country is bullying. Bullying, one of the things that's a huge problem in our schools now. Going to school, when the teacher introduced me to the classroom and told the class that I was African, the school district that I went to, majority of the students were majority African American. Well, the first thing that popped into their head was slavery. So as soon as they got the opportunity, they're like, "Hey, you African slave, African booty scratcher, you're so black we can only see you when you smile." So there was a lot of the ripping and the joking, which when you're little you don't know how harmful and hurtful that can be. But it is. Some people call it the dirty dozen, and it's basically you rip on somebody, and either the kid learns to rip back, learns to joke back with you, or they can have their self-esteem almost literally destroyed, and they kind of withdraw, get themselves out of the environment. It can be very damaging for a kid. Well, a lot of kids are indoctrinated with this not just kids coming from other cultures, but all kids going into the schools have to deal with other kids talking about them. And you wonder, where does this come from? How did a kid know about slavery just from hearing the word Africa? How can me coming from Cameroon, an African country, cause a child, an American child who was 6, 7 years old, to say slavery? They couldn't have gone through it. They couldn't have known it. It was hundreds of years ago. And they're not to the age where they're even being taught this in the history book in the curriculum yet, being first or second or third grade. So you have to ask, where are they getting these ideas from? That just because I came from Africa, I'm a slave. Well, I went home to my mother. I talked to her about it. I was really upset. I said, Mom, what is slavery? What is a slave? She explained to me that, unfortunately, a lot of African Americans, black people that are in America, their family and their ancestors actually were brought over here, on a ship. And my mom explained to me the whole thing. And she said, don't tease anybody about it. They may tease you, but you're tough enough to take it. Okay, they ask you if you're chasing cheetahs, just say yes. Even make a nice story. I say, yeah, we hid behind the bushes, and we're looking for the slowest cheetah, and we have to stand in a particular stance so that we can take off and catch the cheetah. So what I usually did was I kind of made fun of myself with the other students, and that kind of broke a comfortable barrier. It kind of made them more comfortable, made me comfortable as well, and we interacted and caused more positive interactions because I didn't take their questioning toward me negatively, even though they were ignorant to who I was and where I was from, or the reality of what I was living. So as we get started with this presentation,
it's already playing. Just hit the space bar.
Just hit the space bar. Thank you. I'm sorry. Good man. What is culture? Let's see. All I touched was there.
There you go.
What is culture? Culture definition defined the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. Actions, things that you're doing that groups recognize and take on to do regularly and continue to do in their lives and interactions. Okay, now, how do we look at that? Recognize and allow appropriate student culture. So if you see, culture is always being created. New trends, new trendy stuff. So as you see, students and our people interacting a certain way, doing certain things, if it's appropriate, see if maybe you can kind of let the students know, well, that's okay. I see what you're saying. I saw that on TV the other day. I know what that means. Because students are relational, and they want to know that you kind of know where they're coming from. Students should be exposed to different culture to promote diversity amongst the population. Sometimes students, as I told you in my story, may be unaware of other students and where they come from. So promoting that and getting students to have good, positive conversations, a good exercise would be when you come into the classroom, have your students come up and just say two, three things about themselves. And have each student listen, maybe give them a round of applause when these students start talking. So students feel like they know each other. So it feels like a finally warm kind of environment where a kid gets comfortable and puts down their guards and barriers and is willing to learn. It's comfortable around you. And be familiar with different cultures in order to be comfortable and better prepared to work with those students. I'm a sports guy. All right, if I, Woodland Hills, we played Penn Hills, we played Gateway, we played Central Catholic, we played all these things. The first time you play them, you don't really know what they're going to bring. After a while, you know what they're bringing. The Steelers know what the Bengals are bringing to the table. You know what you're getting. What you're getting. And so, if you make the students comfortable with other cultures and how other cultures are, it eases the air a little bit. It thickens the air, thins the air in the room, and it's not as thick and the comfortability is better. Actually, I'm sorry. The students become more comfortable and actually open up once they know all the other students, and even talk about yourself. Come in the room, let them know who you are. Because if they feel comfortable with you and know a little bit about you, that eases the ground for them as well and kind of helps them be able to learn and pay attention to you more. Okay, here we go. Return again, space bar.
Yeah.
I might need you to stay over here, Sue. I'm going to ask my assistant, Sue Lewis, to assist me. She will operate the PowerPoint because this presentation must go on. All right, so when we look at culture, the next one should be a video. Has anyone in here ever heard of Freedom House? Put your hand up if you heard of Freedom House. Okay, my Edgewood people, they've heard of Freedom House. Okay, I do programs for our kids on Wednesdays. They come in the auditorium for recess, and instead of playing, they spend one day a week with me. We talk about culture and different things like that so they can become more comfortable with each other. One of the things we talked about, because it's Black History Month, is this group called Freedom House. Well, they're actually from Pittsburgh. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the first ambulance ever invented was invented here in Pittsburgh by a group of people called Freedom House. And when I found out about this, I was happy, excited, and pissed off also. Because why didn't I learn about this in school? How could these people have began and started an ambulance, and I took history, in the schools, and I didn't find out about this? Okay, these people were heroes. All right, they started out as nurses. They found out that what happened is sometimes in some minority neighborhoods, when the police are called or when an emergency happens and someone is injured, there wasn't any ambulance. So people actually rode to the hospital in the back of a police car. If you ever think about the JFK assassinations, Martin Luther King, those guys rode in the hospital in the back of a police car or a paddy wagon type thing. There wasn't any special ambulance or vehicle to escort them to the hospital and also to treat them on the way. Well, this group from Pittsburgh decided that they would get a van, they would get permission from some doctors, some equipment, get a van, tear out the seats from out of the van, put medical equipment in the van, turn on the radio stations to the police signal. When they would hear of violent situations, they would head in that direction. They talked to the police, make sure the police were aware of it. They put lights in their car so people would know who they were as they came. And they would go to the scenes of these emergency situations. And what happened was they ended up saving people's lives because they could actually operate on people on the way to the hospital. Well, these people operated from 1967 and on, and I hit the video, and they did a really great job. But unfortunately what happened was, later on, the mayor of Pittsburgh actually got rid of them completely and created his own group to take over the ambulance. So these people who started this this new thing, this ambulance that saved people's lives, never really got the credit, the recognition, and most of them never got hired as an ambulance when the city took over the position. That's not that long ago, people. 1967, I think, until 1975. So these people operated in Pittsburgh, going to minority neighborhoods because sometimes police may take a little longer to get there. We're not going to say purposely or anything.
I don't think that they really thought that was going to ever work. I mean, we're talking about 25 black men. That's how it started. It was 25 of us.
In order to achieve change, and this is what we're after, there has to be conflict.
Back in the 60s, when we called the ambulance, the police came.
Policemen were in charge of taking people to the hospital.
And they would put the person on that little stretcher and throw them in the back of the paddy wagon, slam the door, and go as fast as they can. People were dying from this.
We were aiming for a training program for ambulance attendants under the direct supervision of physicians.
Freedom House was a program to hire the unemployable, some of the alcoholic and drug abuse people that they wanted to get off the streets.
The Hill District is the #1 poverty area in the city, with the largest number of underprivileged.
I mean, the title said, ambulance driver. I said to myself, ambulance driver was just like, whatever it's chauffeur for sick people. And we went to school, we went to the training, and we did excellent job.
We were starting IVs in the field, doing trach irrigation in the field.
We were the ones who changed all emergency medical services. We became the standard.
At a time, black people couldn't get an ambulance. You could. Unless you get service.
You look at the time, 1966, billions, let's see, killing of Dr. King.
Black power is born. Young blacks with no patience for King's nonviolence. And there are riots, burning, looting, rock throwing. We had to leave our lights on inside this police light so they could see who we were. Otherwise, without it, they're going to break the windshield out and we'd probably be drug out. But they knew about freedom.
Once people realized that we were in the help, we had no problem.
There was a whole argument as to whether Freedom House could cover the entire city because it was perceived that the peoples of the African American community were receiving a much higher standard of care in emergency situations than other communities were in the city.
Because we weren't black, we went into some of the different neighborhoods and people weren't ready for that.
I remember the political fight around the future of Freedom House.
The mayor decided to put his own service in the system. In opposition to Freedom House in 1975.
How can I be nice about this? He didn't like Freedom House. That's being blunt.
You can take something from nothing and make something out of it. Everybody else wants to get in on the play.
I want to emphasize how we were used. There was a lot of dirt involved with Freedom House. Nobody wants to talk about that. There was money taken, there was money stolen, it was to the advantage of a lot of people. And I know this occurred, but you won't get nobody to admit it.
It was something that black people in this high here was taken up by the government. And then the next thing you know, taken away from us.
City was kind of laid right out from under us.
Everybody advanced, everybody profited, everybody made out, but none of us. We were just like the field hands.
All right, now, how great would that be? You know, starting a lesson like that. You know, talking to your students about this group of people that some of them could possibly be related to. Right here in Pittsburgh. You know, things like that kind of draw the student in. Oh yeah, there was a group of right here in Pittsburgh on the hill. I know that place. You know, now they're coming to you. Hey, Mr. Nanji, could you tell me a little bit more about that Freedom House? Now you're making a bond. You're making a connection with the students. All right, regardless of what culture they are, because they can relate to that, because they're from Pittsburgh. Regardless what, you know, ethnicity group they're from, or whether they're Hispanic or black or white, this is here in Pittsburgh. This is Pittsburgh history. Sometimes using things like that can help ease attention and allow students to be more comfortable in the classroom environment. Education in our district. How does education play? How does culture play a role in our schools? Okay, is it representing culture in the curriculum we use? Using art and music that are relative to the culture we can have in our classrooms. Make students aware of intellectual and academic achievements of the cultural figures regularly. Cultural figures would be like these guys I just showed you. You know, do it regularly. Don't just wait until there's a email and it's African American History Month. Do a little bit of research. Take a little bit of time because you're working with these students. You're going to be dealing with. Take some time to get to know about them and about people like them that you can introduce them to that are positive role models. All right, work to find acceptable examples of positive appropriate culture to introduce them to. And also, if you're familiar with how Woodland Hills began, Woodland Hills is a collection of neighborhoods, of individual, different groups. So you have Forest Hills, Churchill Valley, Edgewood, Turtle Creek, Swissvale, Braddock Hills, Rankin. Okay, so we have a lot of communities. East Pittsburgh, Shell Farm. Thank you guys. So you see all the different communities that came together to form this district, and all had different schools, and all had different meetings where they all had their own different plans and individual ideas of how to teach. And we all came together. But when we came together, we collectively say, what's going to be our idea now? Are we all on the same page now? So now we can't revisit the past. We're here. So how are we going to make a difference now to make sure that that all the different cultures are being represented in the curriculum. If you're reading a story, okay, and the story speaks about a certain culture, okay, and you're looking at your demographics in your classroom, can you take that story and translate it so the kids understand it? You know, even me as a behavioral specialist, when I'm talking to the students, I want to give them examples of things that they can relate to. You know, stories are something they can say, okay, I see what you're talking about, Mr. Nanji. You know, whereas some vocabulary they may need for testing, as we know, but that's not what they usually relate to. And we have the ability as teachers, and we're intellectual enough to be able to do both. To educate them and prepare them for these testings, but still make them feel comfortable about the culture that they have, that it's okay, as long as it's positive. Spaceball. All right. Now, no diverse cultural groups of students. I think, a graph that I had up here. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it on the PowerPoint, but it basically just talks about the race and ethnicity in our schools. And sometimes I ask myself, why actually are we tracking race and ethnicity? Don't we feel all people are created equally? Why actually are we seeing that there are 0.7% Asian in our schools? Black and African American, 75%. Hispanic, 1.8%. Multiracial, what does that mean? Okay, so black, you calling yourself multiracial, or are you calling yourself black? Okay, so this is, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. All right, so and then we have white. What is white? No one's white. All right.
Right.
All right. So 27.9%, white. All right. So we look at these numbers. Who's keeping track of these? Who decided to put this in the school so that we even pay attention to how many of my students are black, right? Or not black? Why? So it brings us to the point, where in our culture did it become so spread out across the culture that it's acceptable to put on job applications, to study, for jobs, who's working where, students, scholarships, anything you look at, you fill out an application, they're asking you what race you are. So this is nothing that we brought. It was already in play once we came to be educators. This system was already put into play. All right, so we look at our students, right? Now you get characterizations, okay, from different groups. They say, well, black people, or, these kids are bored, they're lazy. All right. Disinterested students can get labeled lazy, disruptive, problem children, troublemaking, just a few names. Feelings about what interests you are obtained by interaction and relationship building. Our opinion of culture can be based on real encounters. What you really experienced, like maybe when I was telling you about how I came to America from Africa. Or you can get it from your feelings, seeing something, hearing something, watching it on TV, radio, social media, your five senses, they're orbs, they're sucking things in, whether you like it or not. These kids are sucking things in. They spend time with their family, sometimes they hear things they're not supposed to, even out in the neighborhood with their friends, on the bus coming into the school. Sometimes they come into the school with a story already for you, and it's not the story you want to give them. All right? And sometimes they tend to want to focus on the things that excite them the most. So we want to make sure that maybe lesson planning or my engagement with them, the correct behavior, has to be exciting, has to catch their attention. Because they're used to being stimulated. We did our math by hand. They had the calculator, right? The answer's right there, right away for them. No text instrument, right? All right? We had to do it the hard way. We had to do the arithmetic. We had to know the formulas. These kids want satisfaction right away. Are you adjusting? Are we adjusting? Are we all adjusting to that? We have to. The phone rings, you don't answer it, they're texting you. I hate you, you don't answer my phone calls. Back in the day, they didn't have cell phones, right? Someone calls you, you leave a message. I'll call you when I get home. All right, the times are changing a little bit. We want to make sure we keep advancing and adjusting with the times. So also looking back at these different categories, we're categorizing people by color, right? Red, white, yellow, black. What are these colors and what are the traits that were given to these different classifications?
Right? Sorry.
All right, so we'll go into history a little bit. We'll look at a person named Carl Linnaeus. He was a scientist, botanist, anthropologist, and he did classification, okay? Binomial nomenclature. if I said that right. Systemata. Someone help me. Got any science here? All right. But he created a system where you can class kingdom, phylum, and those kind of things. Insecta, animals. You can classify plants and animals to determine what species they were. I learned this in high school. What I did learn that he also created a classification for human beings. And I didn't learn this till I got out of college, actually, and I stumbled upon it because I was looking at myself and self-identity and some self-esteem, and things kept happening to me, and I kept wondering why I was being treated the way I was being treated, why people saw me differently. So you imagine someone who is in a minority culture, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're Asian, whatever they may be looking at themselves, asking these same questions in your classroom. You know, what's different about me? Why do people treat me the way they do? I remember being 14 years old, and I first moved to Woodland Hills School District. I was crossing the street in Churchill. I think we were the first African American house to move on Grand Boulevard. Now it's like 80% African American. But when I crossed the street, first time ever I actually recalled encountering racism. I crossed the street, and the people in the car at light locked their car door on me. It scared me. 12 years old, crossing the street, minding my business, and these people locked their doors. And I was I was shooken. And I thought to myself, why did they lock the door? And at first I didn't pay any attention, but later on I came to realize that they wanted to show me that they either were afraid of me or wanted me to know that they didn't like me. Okay, so little things like that happen all the time. Okay, now we know that we're hired here to be teachers. We got to care about these kids, right? Okay, well, we wouldn't be in this building, right? But sometimes you got to wonder, does this go on? Are there some people in there that don't care about their kids, that are doing these little kind of things like locking the door as a kid crosses the street? What's the equivalent of that in the classroom? You know, in the hallways, when I see behavior, am I disciplining the kids the same, regardless of their ethnicity and culture? I'm asking myself that question. I do not ask you. I don't want to offend anybody. I got to ask myself that question. Because I'm dealing with different culture too. So as educators, if we're really serious about this education thing, this business that we're in, okay, we got to ask ourselves that question. I don't want to ask anybody else. I'm going to ask myself. And I'm going to challenge you to do the same. In certain situations, it may not even be on purpose, but are you handling the situations in an appropriate way where a child doesn't feel isolated, that you've made them feel some type of way? And then later on, the kid comes and says, I hate that teacher, I hate that person. And you're doing your hardest to educate them, because you really don't hate the kids. You're trying to do your best. Maybe it was by accident. Maybe you did something you didn't recognize. Now the kid's like, I can't stand that teacher. I don't want to be in this classroom. And we never know why. So this is something we kind of have to look at for ourselves. So as we look at the different classifications, I left it up here so as you can read it on your own. It's despicable and disgusting. Okay, as he classified African Americanus, he described them as red, choleric, and erect. English is my second language, so I had to look up choleric. I looked that up. Bad-tempered, irritable, right? Erect. I'm always uptight, intense. Okay. As we look at the Europeans, they're described as being white, fickle, okay, Sangian, which means positive. All right, blue-eyed, gentle, governed by law. So imagine you getting your group of kids in your classroom and you're really using these classifications. You know, because he classified the animal kingdom, right? Plant kingdom, PhD, this guy wrote books. So someone can be picking this up and saying, well, maybe I've never worked with an African American kid. Well, maybe I got to prepare myself. This kid is choleric. All right? And then we're looking at Asiaticus, okay, shallow, grave, dignified, avaricious, ruled by opinion. And then we're looking at the African, the Afar, black, also choleric, abstinent, stubborn, content, regulated by customs. And as we look under these, they have other classifications. So I'm assuming that these people would be subhuman. Wild man walking on all fours. Eerie. See the movie Walk Like Man, right? So we can see how this can become very sensitive as we're classifying people, you know, from one group to the next. And at the bottom of the totem pole, you're close to being an animal, right? some of our other history members, this is where we get 3/5 compromise, right? You're 3/5 of a human being. All right? So this philosophy, it's documented. Okay? And not only is it, here for us to read, it's been spread out through the culture. You got the economic system. You got the banking system. You have the housing systems. You have things called redlining. I don't know if anybody ever heard of that. They talk about it in Detroit. All right. It's where, you're a minority community. All right. They come estimate the value of your house. Someone wants to buy a house. They buy a house near your neighborhood. Woo! The value of their house is gone. Gone. All right. So redlining is something that kind of capped off the minority neighborhoods and allowed others to buy houses outside of those neighborhoods, right? So that their house value could be worth more. They could be appraised at a higher value. They can get more money back when they sell their home. They can pass that money down to their generation. Their generation can start off with some money in their pocket, right? But when you're redlined, your value of your house is not worth that much. You don't get that much for your house. You can't sell that house and give your money for your college, for your kids to go to, whatever it may be. Okay, so to see how systems are set up to where underneath, it's not up front, underneath, families are being driven to be in situations where they're more impoverished. They don't have as much opportunity. Okay, when we look at education, it trickles into education. It's not supposed to, but if somebody believes this idea and they're talking about it, someone else is going to hear about it, they're going to think about it, it's going to be in their head, whether they want it to be or not. And obviously it is an education because, as I showed you before, we have a tracking system. How many African Americans we have, how many Hispanics we have, how many whites we have. Why are we tracking that? Okay, so ask yourself, does it make a difference what color your students are? Or is the important thing what culture they have and what culture they're bringing in and what culture you want them to have and what culture you want to install into them?
Should be click.
Hit it, click it again.
Should be.
Oh, I have to go back. So I have another video to show you, and this talks about Carl Linnaeus. I may have to skip it because it seems like I'm taking a lot of time and I may run out of time.
You got like 12 minutes.
And we'll skip this video. I want to skip this one, but that one basically tells you what I just did about Carl Linnaeus. Okay, we'll move on. We talked about race tracking. We can argue about it, but we know it's there. Okay, now we take a look at this. Is culture passed down through generation? As I'm talking about passing income down, we also pass culture down. All right, so let's look at trauma. Let's just look at trauma. I'll get my slide on this later, but PTSS, right? Post-traumatic, stress? Disorder. PTSD, right? Okay, there's something else. They call it PTSS. Okay, a lady named Joy DeGruy came up with this term. Let's talk about PTSD first. Okay, now, you go off the war, right? You see all type of atrocities. Bones being blown off. People being killed. Murdered. Your best friends murdered right in front of you. You have dreams and nightmares about this stuff. You wake up in the morning and you're choking your partner. Okay? Because you're going crazy in your head. These things are real. They've been diagnosed. They come home from war. And we treat our soldiers, right? They're veterans. We want to get help for them. Because they have to have families. They may be raising the next generations. And we don't want their trauma to go on to the next generations. So what do? We give them treatment. We find medication if they need it. Right? Imagine someone coming home from war, 1,000 soldiers coming home from war. We know they've been through it. We know they've seen hell, been hell and back. And they come, you know what? We don't have any treatment for them. We're not taking you to see a doctor. There's no medication for you. Go on and raise your families, right? What do you think is going to happen to those children? What type of trauma do you think that is going to be put upon those children by those people who did a service for us by going to fight in war and come back traumatized, and they have to raise families dealing with this trauma that they're trying to figure out who are they and what's going on in their head, right? Now they raise a generation of kids. That generation comes up. They've had to take in the trauma that their parents gave them, that they got from war, right? They don't get treated. They continue. It's a rolling effect. So we look at the African American community. We look at slavery. Now we're going to talk about PTSS. They will not give that a diagnosis. They won't call it legitimate. It doesn't exist. But when you go through hundreds of years of slavery, when you're driven across the ocean, when you see people thrown in the water because they don't want to be cuffed by their neck, okay? They don't want to sit in a boat and defecate on themselves for a month and a half, in an enclosed space. And they're killing each other, and their language is taken away. And they're beaten and whipped, and they're being made to breathe. And they're taken away from their children, and their mothers are taken away from daughters. Husbands are taken away from wives. And then you put them on a plantation, right? And then you're like, survive. And then they have kids, and you're like, raise your kids. Okay? And do they have medication for this trauma? No. Do they have doctors? Anyone seeing them, asking them what's going on in their lives, and they need help? No. What are they doing? They're raising their generation the best they can. The best they can. And we've had great people come from this. Martin Luther King, right? All these great people, astronauts, going into space, all these kind of things, coming from people that have been completely traumatized and have never had mental health. Right? So these kids are coming to your classroom. How do you feel about it? Is it just a problem child that just can't shut up and is loud and is angry and is violent? Right? What are you thinking about the trauma generationally that this child has been through? And it's always easy to just say, well, that was in the past. Well, that's not in his past. Because that father gave it to his son. And that father gave it to his son. And it's in that kid's life now. It's not in his past. Right? So how are we handling that in the classroom? Are we having a little bit of empathy? We still have to do our job. But do we care about the trauma that's going on in some of these students' lives? Okay? We can look at the Hispanics. Alright? We can look at other groups. Asians. They helped build the railroads, right? Other groups have had to come to America and dealt with this kind of trauma. Okay? Are we aware of this? Okay? Our students may not even know why they feel this way, but they're being trained. Alright? I don't want to be what? I don't want to be beaten. Stay away. Run and hide. Please come. Stay away. Run and hide. You wonder where we get these things from. Okay? Let's click. And now we look at the timeline. Slavery was a long time ago. It was. Right? But how long have we been free? Right? How long have African Americans been free? And I say we because slavery was enslaving everybody. It's a mental enslavement for everybody. You got to act like people are not real people. That does something to you. It's not only doing something to the people that are into slavery, but it's doing something to the people that are pretending that it's not wrong. How? Right? So, 300 years. Okay? After Reconstruction, we're looking at Jim Crow. What is Jim Crow? Alright? That's when I'm in my neighborhood, and I know the government made a change of law, but my neighborhood's going to have our own law. And if you come past our neighborhood by 7 o'clock, you go to jail. Alright? You come past our neighborhood, past at any time when you're African American, we'll lock you up for 5 days. Or take 5 days pay. How's that going to do for your family? Right? Segregation. Okay? Thurgood Marshall. School districts. The dogs. The dog case. Right? They asked the kids, what dog do you think is better? I like that white dog. Right? Because everything you see is that's the supremacy. The culture. It's not okay to be me. I want to be that dog. This was proven in court. Alright? Now we look at, even after segregation, a lot of the roadblocks that come in from systems. War on drugs, okay? Mass incarceration, right? School to prison pipeline. Are these things real? Well, look at the trauma. Where do you think it went to? Right now we create systems where we're throwing them right in jail as soon as they show this trauma. Cognitive dissonance. We'll kind of get to cognitive dissonance is a term I want you to be aware of. Once I talk about this term, I'll kind of get to the last video. And what cognitive dissonance is, if you want a definition. Has anybody in here actually ever heard of that term? All right. The state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes, especially as relating to behavior, decisions. All right. So if you believe that everyone's created equal, but you're watching the system of slavery, and you know it's wrong, you're pretending it's not, you have cognitive dissonance in your mind. It can tear you apart. Right? You're battling between two things. You know something's wrong in your heart, but outside, society's pretending it's not. You have to watch this. You're dealing with it. You're just as traumatized as the person who's dealing with the oppression. Okay, let's see. Yes, we're going to go... I think this presentation, we're going to try to post it on the website so you can get the complete presentation. But there are some names I want to throw out there to you. some experts in cultural awareness and race and ethnicity. Dr. Joy DeGroot, she's a good one. She worked at the University of Washington. She was a professor. I heard her speak at Duquesne University at the Barbara Sizemore concert. Excellent lady. Talks about cognitive dissonance, talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome, talks about the effects of this and how it affects the schools. All right, Dr. Jane Elliott, another one. She's excellent. You can see her on YouTube. Okay, very passionate lady. All right, Dr. Umar Johnson. These people came out with a system of videos called a sequence of video called Hidden Colors, where they talked about a lot of history about African Americans that have been hidden. All right, Dr. Tariq Nasheed, he also worked on that project with him as well. Jawanza Kunjufu wrote a book about how to deal with minority students in the classroom. Okay, and when I do presentation again, we post it up. I'll make sure that the names of some of the books of these people can be posted so you can take a look if you're interested in it. Okay, I'm going to move to a video by Jane Elliott, and I'm going to end it. Very, very powerful video. It speaks for itself. I don't need to say much. I hope you guys enjoy it.
You're doing it again. Doing it again. I don't. You're doing it again. Wrong. You're doing it again. Persecuted Crows for standing up. Persecuted him for standing up. The only change that ever happens is when people stand up and let somebody down. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. Are you in any physical danger here? Are you in any physical danger here? Is that girl in any physical danger here? That Joe was hanged by his neck after he was beaten almost to death, simply because he made a statement to a white woman. People like this institution.
You made your point, you're right.
Thank you very much. That is my point that I've made.
But you can't make generalizations about any place because there's racism everywhere.
That's right. And while it may be No. You don't come back in here until you apologize to every person in this room. Because you just exercise the freedom that none of these people of color have. When these people of color get tired of racism, they can't just walk out because there's no place in this country where they're not going to be exposed to racism. They can't even stay in their own homes and not be exposed to racism if they play on television. But you, as a white female, when you get tired of being judged and treated unfairly on the basis of your eye color, you can walk off that door. And you know it won't happen out there. You exercise the freedom they don't have. If you're going to be in here, you're going to apologize to every black person in this room. And do it now. And Latinos, every person of color.
Racism, this country.
Bullshit! No, you're not going to say, I'm sorry about racism. You're going to apologize for what you just did.
That's the difficult part about it, because a lot of us, we're not racist. We don't feel we're racist, or, reverse racism. We're not like, I don't do that, do I? But systems do. And when the systems do, are you recognizing what role you're playing in that system? What role you can stand out from the system to show that you're not supporting it, even though you're not racist. Okay? Are you allowing systems to go on that continue to allow people to be hurt and destroyed because they have different cultures and their culture is not the top culture at the time, or the majority culture? Okay, the ultimate goal is that we're here for education. We can't change the numbers of staff. Just blink and we have an equal number of ratio of students and staff. So the numbers are what they are. We're here. We got to believe in each other. We got to do our best for these students. And as I said before, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I'm just here to kind of show you guys, some of the things that have been hidden that are sensitive issues that I wanted to make aware to you about culture for our students, and some of the things that they come into the classroom with, and we often sometimes don't think about is making a difference. As to why these behaviors are coming into our schools. And do we care enough to provide positive role models and examples like the one I did in the first video with the Freedom House? There are all kinds of examples like that. Guys who invented the traffic signal and all kinds of things, to where we can give these guys positive role models so they can begin to feel good about themselves, whatever their culture is. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.